the way they do it, right? You hire lobbyists and you do this and that. And the reality is, if the oil companies and some environmental group or some university are employing the same lobbyists, the oil companies are always going to be able to pay them more and get what they want out of them. And so I think, we really need to, really hunker down and evaluate that question. How do we make these changes? How do we get what we want? Which involves questions of like strategy and tactics, which I think the left just has no concept of. I mean, I'm seeing that right now to revisit something, like it's the Cornel West presidency. Like the Greens and a lot of lefties I know who would consider themselves really radical and they're like ready to go to the barricades all the time are like all in on Cornel West candidacy. And they're pissed at the Democrats for not putting him on the ballot. And they're like really, I just don't get it. I don't get the fetishism about elections. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not being a smartass here. Can you tell me what we gained from even Nader's candidacy? I don't think he's a bad guy, but Nader's candidacy or Jill Stein's or Jesse Jackson's or Bernie Sanders. I mean, what specifically did we gain from any of those campaigns? I mean, the country's more further to the right all the time. So we've had these so-called insurgent left campaigns, and the whole time the country's moving further and further to this really crazy, scary right. So what did they accomplish? Like, what's Cornel West going to do that Bernie Sanders couldn't do, or that Jill Stein or Nader or anybody else? What is he going to do by running for president? Like, what's going to do? How are we going to, 4 years from now, how are we going to look back and say, oh man, West campaign really changed things for us? What's he going to do? And the left never asked that question.
No,
elections.
We just go all in on these chaotic attempts to run for president, whether it's in the Democratic primary or whether it's as a Green or some other kind of independent.
I mean, the media's going to beat the shit out of them. The Democrats have already started. You've already satisfied their need for a left boogeyman, right? So you got it. They can punch left now. They've already they're all set, right? If Biden loses,
Carville came out and said it yesterday.
What did he say?
He said that Cornel West was a menace to constitutional order in this country.
Constitutional order?
It was something like that, or a viable constitutional government, or something like that. I'm misquoting him, but that's what they do.
No, it's insane, right? And this is the point I think the left doesn't understand. When they hear something like that, which is utterly repugnant, they immediately say, well, we have to do it. But the fact is, like, sometimes you have to say, like, will it work? Like, what can we do to win? Like, everybody, Cornel West is going into this. No one in the fucking world thinks he can win anything, right? He just can't. He's not even going to be on the ballot in most places, right? And, it's funny because on one hand, they're telling you how the Democrats are no different than the Republicans, the Democrats are awful. And then they're outraged that the Democrats are keeping the Greens off the ballot. What the fuck do you expect them to do? That's what they do. They're a corporate political party. And so you're kind of getting upset at them. Like I said before, like that's like getting angry at a lion for eating a wildebeest or whatever the hell they eat, right? That's just who they are. And we really
a poacher.
Yeah, they are. And we have to sit back and think, like, what can we do to win? What can we do to succeed? Is it running a third-party candidate for president? I would absolutely say no to that. And I would challenge anybody who thinks that's a good idea to tell me what's been gained from Bernie Sanders or from like any of those people, right? Because the country's further to the freaking right than it's ever been. Every 2 years, every 4 years, every decade since the 70s, really, since the late 60s, 70s, we've moved rapidly to the scary far right. And so these insurgent campaigns, these elections, like, I don't know, like, and it just to see the Cornel West, like I said, Cornel West is one of the good guys. Absolutely. He defends Palestinians. He speaks up for them. Right.
He's the first one to do it yesterday.
Yeah. And I know the idea as well, as president, he'll get a platform and he'll be able to speak. And like, so to Bernie Sanders, what did it get us? It makes the media feel good. They'll give him some airspace. Then they'll talk about how he's ruining the race because he's going to screw up Biden and all that shit. And I think the left has to sit down and just take some time out and say, how do we get to where we need to be? How do we actually succeed to get what we want? And it's like that question, which is more kind of about strategy and tactics and long politics, right? Just is kind of ignored. And so it's like, oh, let's run Cornel West or let's do this. Like, look at how many.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, back to this question about long politics. I mean, this is like what we've said on the. I don't think we want to go down the Cornel West rabbit hole too much again, but this is what we said in some of our previous episodes about Cornel West, which is that the resources and energy put into a Cornel West candidacy or a Jill Stein candidacy or even Bernie Sanders, is better used in this like long game of organizing and politics. Like the union strikes this happening right now. That's to me, that is much more important than Cornel West when running for president as a Green. The didn't get into it too much, but just the sort of like upsurge of climate activism that we're seeing globally, to the point where governments are like throwing people in prison because they're being so disruptive. That is much more important to me than like a cahotic presidential campaign.
I mean,
I think it's very we're seeing very important movement stuff happening right now, and it's not happening in the Beltway, and it's not happening in this media sphere, necessarily. I guess it happens in the Guardian, but it doesn't really happen anywhere else. I guess Fran Drescher's getting Fran Drescher and the actors are getting a lot of attention, so that's good. But
yeah, and I mean, there are things you can do. Like, I don't have a fucking answer for it either, but I mean, just there, like on the surface, there's stuff you can do. Like Bernie Sanders raised 180 million. I keep going back at 180 million dollars. Can you imagine what like you could do with that? Or some of the friends we've had on, like Jake or others, right? $180 million. But there are people out there, like you said, there's union organizers, there are people doing mutual aid, there are people doing environmental defense. There's people out there doing stuff, but it's hard for them to get any kind of footwork, to get any kind of support, to get any kind of revenue funding, right?
Yeah.
And because these big celebrity kind of things suck up that oxygen. And again, like, I don't really care about Cornel West, the impact he has on Biden. Biden is mesomorphed, as I've been saying. So it's not that. I don't care if he runs as a Green or as a Democrat or whatever. The point is, it's a huge diversion of energy, of people's work, of money away from stuff that I think is more immediate. I mean, if in some fantasy world Cornel West became president, like what would he get done? What would he get done? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine? I mean, right now they want to impeach Biden, who they call a socialist. If they did that to Cornel West, the Democrats would vote for impeachment too, right? So,
yeah,
it's
exactly.
it's I mean, they're still paying the price for Nader in 2000, right? He's still getting blamed, right? And what do they think is going to happen? The Democrats, there's this fantasy. These guys live in this world of unicorns and rainbows, where the Democrats say, you know what, we should listen to these people, because, we need them, right? The Republican Party reaches out as far right as it can, and there's no idea too dangerous or too crazy for them to adhere to. The Democrats, these liberals think like, oh, if Cornel West is there, they're going to have to pay attention to him, and they're going to have to try to take some of these issues on as their own. Like, when have they ever done that? When have they ever done that? Bernie Sanders ran quite well, actually, with his main, theme being a Medicare for all, right? Mm-hmm. Not a single Democrat bought into that. It went nowhere. It's gone nowhere. It's going nowhere. So what do you get from these quixotic electoral campaigns? This electoral fetish, man. It's like, electoral role playing or something. And I don't get it. And I think we should all, and nobody knows really who we are in the big picture, but I really wish somebody would say, okay, like all of these groups, everybody, unions, environmental groups, we need to sit down and figure out, like, how do we get what we want? How? Mm-hmm. Like, everybody knows what we want. That's kind of easy to come up with, right? The ruling class is bad, the people are good, unions are blah, 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 labor, environment. Yeah, that's easy. What are the problems? What do we want? But how do we do it? Nobody ever freaking asked that. Or the people who do, no, I don't want to say nobody. In fact, there are people who do that, but they don't have the resources.
Highly paid people.
Yeah, but they're the way that the system works. You're not. Look, that's not part of it.
Well, those tables they're sitting down at, where they're saying, "How do we get what we want?" They're doing it completely in the context of electoral politics. Like, how does this play game on the Democrats, right? So
yeah, I mean, for decades now, the Democrats have relied on the courts which has always been a fool's game, right? Right, and we're seeing that now, right? You know, I don't know for how long the Democrats relied on, the Supreme Court for Roe v. Wade, and they ignored the fact that, it was being chipped away with people like, Biden voted for the Hyde Amendment. The famous Casey Planned Parenthood case, that's a Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, who's now senator, right? So you rely on the courts, you rely on elections to get people elected to Congress. The fucking New York Democrats can't even win, you rely on going out to vote, and it's just, if you want to vote, that's fine, but we need to figure out how do we get the stuff that we want? How do we get the changes we want? How? What strategies, what tactics, who do we go to? What do we do? What do we not do? And I don't think celebrity political campaigns, celebrity electoral campaigns are not on the list.